Few American symbols, or even symbols in general, have inspired more controversy and more speculation than the Great Seal of the United States. Up until now, there's been very little information to explain the meaning of these enigmatic symbols, other than the official interpretations on one hand, and the sometimes wild theories cropping up from the other. This documentary will examine how these symbols came to be, examine and speculate on possible influences found in the seal, and bring to light new facts about the symbols that have rarely, if ever, been discussed. This documentary will challenge the official interpretations where they've been found to be incorrect or make little sense. But most importantly, it will uncover the message hidden so long in plain sight and reveal the coming to pass of a prophecy 2,000 years in the making. The Great Seal of the United States was created in 1782. It was commissioned by the Continental Congress in 1776, and the task was given to 3 separate committees over a period of 6 years to come up with the design. The Great Seal is a sort of national coat of arms and is used to identify and stamp official documents. The committees were tasked with creating a design that would best represent the ideals and beliefs of a new nation. The first committee was composed of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams. Pierre-Eugène du Simitier was called in later to aid with the design. Their ideas included the children of Israel in the wilderness and the judgment of Hercules, but the final design they submitted was a depiction of chaotic rebellion alongside ordered justice and her balance. Moses crossing the Red Sea was finally settled upon for the reverse of the seal. While this submission was ultimately rejected, 4 features of their submitted design were included in the final seal. The Eye of Providence, the date of independence 1776, the shield, and the Latin motto E Pluribus Unum. The second committee members included James Lavelle, John Moran Scott, and William Churchill Houston. They were aided by Francis Hopkinson, designer of the American flag, the Great Seal of the state of New Jersey, and the 1778 $50 colonial note. This committee also failed in their attempt to create the seal, but contributed the following elements to the final design: 13 red and white stripes, a constellation of 13 stars, a quiver of arrows, and the olive branch. The third committee members were John Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, and Elias Boudinot. They relied on William Barton as their consultant. William Barton was a lawyer skilled in heraldry and contributed most to the third committee's failed submission. Barton's contribution to the final seal included a small crested white eagle, wings spread, a small flag, a 13-step pyramid similar to Hopkinson's colonial note design, and the Eye of Providence from the first committee placed over the pyramid. After the failure of the 3 committees to produce an acceptable design, the Continental Congress turned to Secretary Charles Thomson. Charles Thomson completed the design utilizing different elements of the former submissions. Thomson submitted his ideas and worked with William Barton to complete the design. It is important to note that no visual representation of the final seal was presented to Congress. Thomson made his sketch, however it was not submitted along with his description or explanation. The Continental Congress approved the design based on written description alone. This is the original seal passed by Congress in 1782. Arms: paleways of 13 pieces, argent and gules. A chief, azure. The escutcheon on the breast of the American bald eagle displayed proper, holding in his dexter talon an olive branch, and in his sinister a bundle of 13 arrows, all proper, and in his beak a scroll inscribed with the motto E Pluribus Unum. For the crest over the head of the eagle, which appears above the escutcheon, a glory, or breaking through a cloud proper, and surrounding 13 stars forming a constellation, argent, on an azure field. Reverse, a pyramid unfinished, in the zenith an eye in a triangle surrounded with a glory proper. Over the eye these words, Annuit Coeptis. On the base of the pyramid the numerical letters 1776, and underneath the following motto, Novus Ordo Seclorum. In his remarks and explanations, Charles Thomson explained, "The shield is composed of 13 stripes that represent the several states joined into one solid compact. Supporting the chief, which unites the whole and represents Congress, the stripes are kept closely united by the chief, and the chief depends upon that union and the strength resulting from it. The motto E Pluribus Unum alludes to this union. The shield is borne on the breast of an American eagle without any other supporters to denote that the United States of America ought to rely on their own virtue. The olive branch and arrows denote the power of peace and war, which is exclusively vested in Congress. The constellation of 13 stars denotes a new state taking its place and rank among other sovereign nations. The pyramid signifies strength and duration. The eye over it and the motto Annuit Coeptis allude to the many signal interpositions of providence in favor of the American cause. The date 1776 underneath is that of the Declaration of Independence, and the words Novus Ordo Seclorum under it signify the beginning of the new American era, which commences from that date. Many throughout the years have sought alternative explanations for the meaning behind the symbols, and honestly it would probably be more strange if they didn't. The symbols themselves are exotic and mysterious. The land of Egypt and its wonders of the ancient world have fueled the imaginations of the West, inspiring awe in both young and old for countless generations. David Barton, longtime proponent of America's Christian heritage and evangelical political activist, is a staunch supporter of the official interpretation. In his book, The Question of Freemasonry and the Founding Fathers, Barton argues for a Christian interpretation of the symbols based on the religious backgrounds of the committee members. He points out that earlier committee renditions of the seal containing Christian symbolism reveal important insights into the meanings of the final rendition. Referring to Franklin's submission of Moses and Jefferson's submission of the children of Israel in the wilderness, he writes, "The committee proposed Bible accounts as the basis of the Great Seal. By what stretch of the imagination could they be considered either Masonic or Illuminati? The all-seeing eye was a part of the original proposal, and it was also directly related to the biblical proposals for the seal." What David Barton doesn't realize is that Christianity is often used as a cloak to disguise the inner workings of the occult. Occult philosopher, mystic, and author Manly P. Hall writes, "The rise of the Christian church broke up the intellectual pattern of the classical pagan world. By persecution of this pattern's ideologies, it drove the secret societies into greater secrecy. The pagan intellectuals then reclothed their original ideas in a garment of Christian phraseology, but bestowed the keys of the symbolism only upon those duly initiated and bound to secrecy by their vows. Not only has the occult used Christianity as a means to obscure itself, it oftentimes twists the stories and meanings of the Bible to support or substantiate its own religious beliefs. There are even whole books of magic that use Bible stories to call down curses on one's enemies. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa von Nettesheim was a magician, alchemist, and astrologer born in Germany in the 1400s. He is most famously known for his series of 3 books on occult philosophy, dealing with spiritual and demon magic. A 4th book was released sometime after his death. While its authorship is in question, it remains an important book in occult circles. One passage in particular is eerily similar to the motivations behind the committee member Bible story design submissions. As, if a deprecation should be made for the overthrow and destruction of one's enemies, then we are to mind and call to remembrance how God destroyed the whole face of the earth in the deluge of waters, and the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah by raining down fire and brimstone. Likewise, how God overthrew Pharaoh and his host in the Red Sea, and to call to mind if any other malediction or curse be found in Holy Writ, and thus in things of the like sort. So likewise in deprecating and praying against perils and dangers of waters, we ought to call to remembrance the saving of Noah in the deluge of waters, the passing of the children of Israel through the Red Sea, and also we are to mind how Christ walked upon the waters and saved the ship in danger to be cast away with the tempest, and how he commanded the winds and the waves and they obeyed him, and also that he drew Peter out of the water, being in danger of drowning and the like. And lastly, with these we invoke and call upon some certain holy names of God, to wit, such as are significative to accomplish our desire, and accommodated to the desired effect, as if it be to overthrow enemies. We are to invoke and call upon the names of wrath, revenge, fear, justice, and fortitude of God. And if we would avoid and escape any evil or danger, we then call upon the names of mercy, defense, salvation, fortitude, goodness, and such like names of God. When also we pray unto God, that he would grant us unto our desires, we are likewise to intermix therewith the name of some good spirit, whether one, onely, or more, whose office it is to execute our desires. And sometimes also we require some evil spirit to restrain or compel, whose name likewise we intermingle, and that rightly especially, if it be to execute any evil work, as revenge, punishment, or destruction. David Barton believes that the eye in the triangle is Christian, as it is being associated with the biblical story designs. But did you notice how Nettachim said lastly, you are to invoke certain holy names of God? Could the eye in the triangle be part of this invocation? This will be discussed a bit further on in the presentation. For now, it is just important to realize that the inclusion of the Bible stories does not exempt the Great Seal from an occult interpretation. The eye in the triangle standing atop the pyramid of the Great Seal is one of the more puzzling components and has been a cause of endless imaginative speculation. Some believe it is the Egyptian sun god Ra, while others believe it is the third eye or the eye of Lucifer. While it is difficult to give an exact interpretation of the symbol, it is possible to find clues hidden within the writings of leading occult authors and practitioners. If the symbol is not just what the official story says it is, what else could it be? Charles Thomson explained that the glorified eye in the triangle represented the many interventions of providence in the creation of the United States. The Cambridge Dictionary defines providence as the care and control of God, or of a force that is not human in origin. The question is raised, is the eye of the triangle a symbol that represents the biblical Christian God? It has been claimed by David Barton and others that the three-sided triangle represent the Holy Trinity. The Masonic Service Association of North America wrote on their website, when placed in a triangle, the eye went beyond a general representation of God to a strongly Trinitarian statement. There is no absolute proof as to what the triangle represents. However, if a Bible story can be used by Christians or occultists, couldn't a triangle representing the Trinity be used as well? In his book, The World's Eye, Dr. Albert M. Potts states, "From our position in the 20th century, it seems perfectly obvious that the triangle symbolizes the Trinity of Christian theology, and indeed it must. However, there was no iconographic tradition for this in the early 17th century when the symbol arose, for by a curious quirk, the triangle was very rare in Christian symbolism through the entire Middle Ages. The reason for this is that it had been adopted by the Manichaeans under Bishop Faustus, and in his effort to stamp out Manichaean heresy, St. Augustine forbade the use of the triangle in all applications. Thus the triangle did not return to Western symbolism via religious art, but through the quasi-religious mysticism of alchemy, astronomy, Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, and finally, Freemasonry." The Great Seal of the United States is not the only place to find the eye in the triangle. It has been used in the symbol for the Neff Masonic publication, and also by the man who called himself the Beast, the magician Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley provides some interesting clues as to the possible origins of the symbol. The Layman, a kind of spiritual coat of arms, for his occultic organization, Ordo Templi Orientis, features the eye in the triangle prominently. In a series of letters to magic student Kara Sorer, he writes, "I am very pleased with your illustrations. That is excellent practice for you. Presently you have to make talismans and a layman for yourself, and even to devise a seal to serve as what you might call a magical coat of arms, and all this sort of thing is very helpful. The layman is a sort of coat of arms. It expresses the characters and powers of the wearer. A talisman is a storehouse of some particular kind of energy, the kind that is needed to accomplish the task for which you have constructed it. As you know, a very great many desirable objects can be attained by the use of the talismans in the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon the King, also in Pietro di Abano and the dubious fourth book of Cornelius Agrippa." Could something resembling the eye in the triangle, which Crowley used in his own layman, be found in any of the magic books that he recommended to Kara Sorer? In the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon the King, we find something interesting. The grimoire was written between the 13th and 17th centuries AD, authorship unknown. It contains directions for summoning 72 demons, which it is said that King Solomon summoned and commanded. Important symbols used in this grimoire are the magic circle, the Triangle of Solomon, also called the Triangle of Art, and the Seal of Solomon, better known as the hexagram. To use the Triangle of Solomon, the magician stands in the center of the larger magic circle and conjures spirits through the circle within the triangle. Blood is sometimes put in the corners of the triangles to attract the demons. The hexagram included in the ritual is also featured in the constellation of 13 stars on the Great Seal. Both the eye in the triangle and the constellation of stars are located in the upper central area of the seal. Both are surrounded by a shining glory. This should imply that they share a similar relationship. Both are important symbols of Kabbalah witchcraft bearing the name Solomon. David Cherubim, founder of the Order of the Thelemic Golden Dawn, states, "The hexagram represents the formula and accomplishment of the great work in both the material and spiritual worlds. It is composed of the symbols for fire and water. It is synonymous with the symbol of the rose and the cross, the Ankh, the sun and the moon conjoined, and the cross in the circle. It represents the union of two opposites in nature, male and female, light and darkness, activity and passivity, and all other opposites that constitute creation. The hexagram is a geometrical symbol of the sun. The sun is an external symbol of the one reality or the one self that is manifest in all things. One of the most significant of all realizations for the adept is that he or she is the sun made manifest in the flesh, an incarnation of the Lord of the solar system. The hexagram is the sign of such an adept." Each line of the hexagram, or hex alpha, indicates the number 111, since a single line of the hexagram contains 3 equal parts, each of which may be represented by the number 1, so that the number 111 can symbolize every line. There are 6 lines in all, so that 111 times 6 equals 666, the most holy number of the sun. If the hexagram signifies the union of opposites, could it be telling us that the opposite sides of the Great Seal share a common theme? That if we combine the 2 opposing symbols of the pyramid and the eagle, we may reveal the true message of the seal? Phallus and yoni imagery is prevalent in the occult. It is used as a sexual metaphor to depict the conception or birth of an idea or organization. The idea of birth, placed above the head of the eagle, will be shown later to have an interesting significance. Turning our attention back to the triangle, we notice that the sides of the triangle each have a different name written on them. Anaphaxeton, meaning God of all the heavenly hosts. Tetragrammaton, meaning Yahweh. Primumaton, the first and the last. Around the circle within the triangle is Michael, the archangel, divided into 3 parts. Mi-Ka-El, by thy holy angel Michael until I shall discharge him. Michael here represents the weapon or power of God, the one who carries the commands. The 3 names of God are invoked in order to bind the spirits coming through the summoning circle to the will of the caster. The idea that the eye in the triangle represents the biblical Trinity may surprisingly be the case for either interpretation of the seal, Christian or occult. From an occultic point of view, however, the eye takes on a much darker meaning, for it is from within the circle that demons from the other world peer into this one. Providence, as defined by the Cambridge Dictionary, a force not of human origin. Earlier I mentioned the words written by Cornelius Agrippa. And lastly, with these we invoke and call upon some certain holy names of God, to wit, such as are significative to accomplish our desire. The triangle of art contains within its sides the 3 holy names of God. Could the first committee members have had Christianity in mind, as Dr. Potts stated before, the triangle had been all but banned for use in Christian art? Were the biblical stories actually meant to call down curses on the enemies of the United States, and/or blessings on the founders' undertakings? Were these spells sealed with the magical triangle of art to invoke the names of God to do the caster's bidding as instructed by Cornelius Agrippa? If this be the case, what desire does the unfinished pyramid of the seal represent, that it requires the magical invocation of the holy names of God? And do the 72 demons from Solomon's Grimoire have anything to do with the 72 stones that eventually came to be represented on the face of the pyramid? We know that numbers play a role here, but in what way do they play a role? Charles Thomson wrote that the pyramid represents strength and duration. The Latin word perennis is written over the pyramid on Francis Hopkinson's 1778 $50 colonial note. Perennis is perennial, meaning long-lasting or reoccurring. The 13 steps on this pyramid were carried over to the Great Seal. However, there were no explanatory remarks by Charles Thomson. Also of interest is that the unfinished pyramid on the colonial note contains no glorified eye at the apex, which implies that these symbols are separate, each having their own meaning. But why are each of these pyramids left unfinished? The United States Department of the Treasury explains, "The unfinished pyramid means that the United States will always grow, improve, and build." But is this the real reason why the pyramid is left unfinished? Let us examine the first major assumption everyone has about the unfinished pyramid on the seal. John D. MacArthur is a freelance writer and creator of the website GreatSeal.com. While explaining the meaning behind the pyramid, he states, "For the final design of the reverse of the Great Seal, Charles Thomson specified a pyramid unfinished and gave only a brief explanation of the symbolism, saying the pyramid signifies strength and duration, no doubt influenced by the Great Pyramid of Egypt." In his book, next to a photograph of the Great Pyramid Khufu in Giza, Egypt, David Barton remarks, "Had we studied ancient history, the reason for the selection of the pyramid would be self-evident. The pyramids were the oldest surviving structure known to the founders, perhaps 5,000 years old at that time. Thus, the selection of that symbol communicated the great desire of the framers, that the American Republic might endure as long as had the Great Pyramids." Even occult philosopher and historian Manly P. Hall had this to say, "The design on the reverse is even more definitely related to the old mysteries. Here is represented the Great Pyramid of Giza, composed of 13 rows of masonry showing 72 stones. The oldest known pyramid in Egypt was built approximately 2630 BC, nearly 5,000 years ago. The Great Pyramid at Giza soon followed. Built for Pharaoh Khufu, it is considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. If the founders wanted a symbol to represent strength and duration, the Great Pyramids of Egypt would have been an excellent choice. However, there's just one problem. The pyramid on the Great Seal of the United States is not Egyptian. The pyramids of Sudan are the little-known counterparts of the Egyptian giants. When the Kushite king Pianki conquered Egypt and established the 25th dynasty, he became the first pharaoh in 800 years to be buried in a pyramid. According to journalstorage.org, the first Nubian pyramid was built around 700 BC, much later than the Great Pyramids. After so many years of exchange, the Nubians worshipped Egyptian gods and kept many Egyptian traditions, even as Egypt itself faded as a power. The Nubian pyramids are smaller, typically less than 100 feet high, where the Pyramid of Khufu is a whopping 440 feet tall. The Nubian pyramids have a steeper slope, a byproduct of Nubian Shaduf-based construction. The pyramids of Egypt are massive, with bases wider than their heights. It is easy to see the resemblance of the Kushite pyramid to the pyramid on the Great Seal. The seal even shows small foliage around the base of the pyramid, a reference to its smaller size. One thing that must be mentioned is that explorer Giuseppe Ferlini destroyed many of the tops of these pyramids in 1834 while searching for gold. This was many years after the Great Seal was designed, so cannot have been an inspiration for the unfinished pyramid design. So the question is why, if the founders were going for a representation of strength and duration, would they choose to depict a much smaller, much younger, and relatively unknown pyramid? Shouldn't the obvious choice have been Khufu's pyramid? The answer to this is in the history and folklore of the region. The land to the south of Egypt has been known by many names. It was called Ethiopia by the Greeks, meaning burnt faces. The word Nubia is believed to come from the Egyptian word for gold. But another, relatively unknown name that this land went by was Kush. Traditionally, it is believed that the Kushites were the descendants of the biblical Cush, grandson of Noah. The Jewish historian Josephus writes, "For of the 4 sons of Ham, time has not at all hurt the name of Cush. For the Ethiopians, over whom he reigned, are even at this day, both by themselves and by all men in Asia, called Cushites." Many scholars believe that the biblical Cush and his descendants were probably located in the area of present-day Iraq. Nevertheless, the belief that Ethiopia was inhabited by the descendants of Cush has carried on in tradition throughout history. But why does it matter? What does Cush have to do with the symbols on the Great Seal of the United States? Cush was the grandson of Noah, but also the father of a man named Nimrod, who is believed to have been the builder of the Tower of Babel, a Cushite tower that was left unfinished. Josephus explains, Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man, and of great strength of hand. Now the multitude were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod, and to esteem it a piece of cowardice to submit to God. And they built a tower, neither sparing any pains, nor being in any degree negligent about the work. Yes, the mysterious symbol on the Great Seal of the United States represents the Tower of Babel, an ancient representation of a Cushite structure left unfinished, built by Nimrod the mighty hunter, in defiance of the Creator. In our next section, we will look at how the other side of the seal supports these findings. When Charles Thomson submitted the eagle design for the front of the seal, he gave no reason in his explanation as to why the bald eagle was chosen. William Barton, who first suggested the eagle submitted with the third seal, stated, "The eagle displayed is the symbol of supreme power and authority and signifies the Congress." John D. MacArthur speculates, although not specifically mentioned, clearly the American eagle on the Great Seal represents liberty and freedom, a theme central to all three preliminary designs. Thomson underscored how the imagery symbolizes independence by explaining that the shield is borne on the breast of an American eagle without any other supporters, to denote that the United States of America ought to rely on their own virtue. While Barton and MacArthur's explanations seem reasonable, many still wonder why our founding fathers chose to use a bird of prey as a symbol for our new nation. In 157 BC, the eagle became the sole standard for the brutal Roman legions. Likewise, the eagle was heralded on the shields of the noble families and upper class in medieval times. In a letter to his daughter dated January 26, 1784, Benjamin Franklin expressed his own disappointment. "For my own part, I wish the bald eagle had not been chosen the representative of our country. He is a bird of bad moral character. He does not get his living honestly. You may have seen him perched on some dead tree near the river where, too lazy to fish for himself, he watches the labor of the fishing hawk. And when that diligent bird has at length taken a fish, and is bearing it to his nest for the support of his mate and young ones, the bald eagle pursues him and takes it from him. With all this injustice, he is never in good case, but like those among men who live by sharping and robbing, he is generally poor and often very lousy. Besides, he is a rank coward. The little kingbird, not bigger than a sparrow, attacks him boldly and drives him out of the district. He is therefore by no means a proper emblem for the brave and honest Cincinnati of America, who have driven all the kingbirds from our country." If one of our most iconic founding fathers couldn't understand why the eagle was selected, shouldn't we also be able to question the choice? Manly P. Hall had this to say about the eagle. Here again, only the student of symbolism can see through the subterfuge and realize that the American eagle upon the Great Seal is but a conventionalized phoenix, a fact plainly discernible from an examination of the original seal. It has long been theorized that the eagle on the seal is actually a phoenix. There are many reasons to take into account why the phoenix is a better fit and why the eagle seems out of place. The eagle on the seal today is reminiscent of the powerful Roman eagle, but on the original seal created in 1782 it appeared quite differently. The first seal appeared as a document stamping seal in 1782, based off the description of Thomson's blazon. The designer of this first seal is unknown, but thought possibly to be Robert Scott of Philadelphia. Benjamin Franklin's confusion over the depiction of this eagle was remarked upon in the letter to his daughter. "I am on this account not displeased that the figure is not known as a bald eagle, but looks more like a turkey. For the truth, the turkey is in comparison a much more respectable bird, and withal a true original native of America." Manly P. Hall went on to further describe the 1782 eagle. "It is immediately evident that the bird of the original seal is not an eagle, nor even a wild turkey as Franklin had hoped, but the phoenix, the ancient symbol of human aspiration towards universal good. The beak is of a different shape, the neck is much longer, and the small tuft of hair at the back of the head leaves no doubt as to the artist's intention." We know that the phoenix is not a far-fetched idea because it was included earlier in the rejected submission of the Third Seal Committee. We can speculate that if the phoenix was a point of contention, changing it into an eagle would have been an option. The Egyptian phoenix has long been associated with the eagle. The Greek historian Herodotus in the 5th century BC noted the similarities between the eagle and the Egyptian phoenix. He states, "Its size and appearance, if it is like the pictures, are as follows. The plumage is partly red, partly golden, while the general make and size are almost exactly that of an eagle. It is also important to note that the eagle has little to no relationship with the pyramid reverse side of the seal. Pyramids were built around sun myths and the belief in rebirth. The Nubian pyramids were themselves a revival of ancient Egyptian pyramid building. From KhanAcademy.org, the shape of the pyramid was a solar reference, perhaps intended as a solidified version of the rays of the sun. Texts talk about the sun's rays as a ramp that the pharaoh mounts to climb to the sky. The pyramid was considered a place of regeneration for the deceased ruler. This idea of rebirth matches the symbol of a phoenix perfectly. In ancient mythology, the phoenix could live anywhere from 500 to 1500 years. When it was ready to die, it would build a nest of acacia wood and set itself aflame. After it was completely consumed in fire, a new phoenix would spring forth, carrying a gift of myrrh and an egg, from the ashes of its predecessor to the altar of the sun god. The Egyptian name of the phoenix was Bennu, which meant to shine or to rise. The phoenix was also sacred to the sun god because the rising of the fiery phoenix seemed to imitate the rising of the sun on the horizon. The phoenix is often depicted rising from a nest of flames. If we examine the American eagle, as depicted on the $quarter, it appears rising over a laurel that looks strikingly similar to a nest of flames. Within the beak of the eagle on the Great Seal is a banner that reads E pluribus unum. Pluribus is from the Latin meaning plural or many, while unum denotes singularity as in a single unit. E pluribus unum is translated out of many, one. Charles Thomson explained that this Latin phrase represented the union of the 13 colonies becoming one. But once again, is the eagle the appropriate icon for heralding this banner? Placing a revered phrase into the beak of a bird of prey, a beak used for tearing and ripping, does not seem like proper form. Observe for a moment the eagle on the Mexican flag. The snake here is the eagle's prey and is in the process of being devoured. This is what we should see happening on the Great Seal, but instead we see a contradiction. Only within the context of the phoenix can the banner of E pluribus unum become a proclamation. The phoenix symbolizes rebirth. Carrying the banner in its beak and rising from the ashes and fire, the phoenix is proclaiming the rebirth of the many coming together as one. Why? Because many years ago at Babel, God scattered the one into many. The united mankind, led by Nimrod, sought to build a tower to the heavens to contest the authority of the Almighty. We now have evidence that the birth of the United States of America heralded the rebirth of Babylon on its official emblem. What has been presented so far may be difficult for some to believe. The evidences to follow should leave little room for doubt that the statements being made here are true. The Council of Europe is a body consisting of 47 European nations. Claiming to be the guardians of human rights, democracy, and rule of law, the Council is one of the oldest international organizations promoting cooperation between nations in Europe. The Council of Europe is separate from the 27 member states of the European Union. They work alongside the United Nations and the EU on a wide range of issues. The flag and anthem of the Council of Europe was adopted by the European Union in 1986. Curiously, the Council of Europe released a promotional poster in the early 1990s that offers insight into the Great Seal of the United States. Here we see the Tower of Babel being rebuilt by a modern humanity. The tower itself is an exact replica of Pieter Bruegel the Elder's 1563 painting of the Tower of Babel that hangs in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, Austria. There are a number of occult symbols present in this poster. Most applicable to this discussion, however, is the statement on the lower right. Europe, many tongues, one voice. Pluribus tongues, unum voice. E pluribus unum in the shadow of the depiction of Babel, coming from a credible high echelon source. But perhaps the most striking external evidence comes from the 2012 London Olympics. The London Olympic Stadium was built especially for the event in 2012. The lighting erected around the stadium was shaped just like the Kushite pyramid. the illuminated portion of the frame reminiscent of the glorified eye in the triangle. The ceremony opened to Nimrod, a musical piece written by Edward Elgar.
80 young musicians joining members of the London Symphony Orchestra to perform Nimrod by Edward Elgar, starting with a celebration of Britain's maritime tradition and the special qualities of an island race. The world is waiting to see what London has to offer. The journey is almost complete. The moment has arrived, and the opening ceremony will take us through the great revolutions in British society.
At the torchlighting ceremony, we are shown a representation of E Pluribus Unum, as the many torches representing the nations of the world come together as one. After the games, at the closing ceremony, we are once again shown the E Pluribus Unum torch. After having come together as one, the torch bursts open into a nest of flames. And we see the rising of the phoenix beneath the all-seeing eye and Kushite Tower of Babel pyramid. But the ceremony's not over yet. British pop group Take That enters the stage singing their hit song, Rule the World. In Revelation 17 and 18, we are introduced to Mystery Babylon. For 2,000 years, man has tried to guess the identity of this city or nation that wields great power and influence over the earth. The similarities to the United States have not gone unnoticed. There are descriptions that very closely resemble the US. However, there has always been a lack of strong evidence to sway many of those on the fence. Now we have much stronger evidence. Revelation 17. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. It is often pointed out that when the Bible speaks metaphorically about a prostitute, it is referring to a backslidden church or a false religion. This is not necessarily the only interpretation. The prostitute can also represent a backslidden nation, and was often used as a metaphor for Israel when Israel strayed away from the Lord. Ezekiel 16:14-15. Your fame went out among the nations because of your beauty, for it was perfect through my splendor which I had bestowed on you, says the Lord God. But you trusted in your own beauty, played the harlot because of your fame, and poured out your harlotry on everyone passing by who would have it. We read something strange in verse 5, written on the forehead of the woman. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. But why is it written on the forehead? And why would the book of Revelation mention a mystery here? Surely the entire book is a mystery. There must be a reason that in the middle of all these other mysteries, this one is specifically pointed out. This is an important clue to her identity. Revelation 14:1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. So we learn that the people of God will have his name written on their foreheads. Going back a bit further to Revelation verse 2 and 3, we learn something about the nature of this writing on the forehead. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. So we learn that a seal created the writings on the forehead of God's people. The writing that is on the forehead is actually a reflection or imprint of what is on the seal of God. Likewise, a seal created the writing on the forehead of the harlot, the seal of Babylon. The writing that is on her forehead is actually a description of what is on her seal. On her seal is a mystery, Babylon the Great. On our seal is a mystery, Babylon the Great. This is the seal that our government says is the unique symbol of our nation's identity. On the back of every dollar bill is a declaration that the United States is the harlot of Babylon, foretold by the prophet John 2,000 years ago. These amazing observations lend the United States theory a whole new level of credibility, and everything else just falls right into place. We learn that this backslidden nation is extremely wealthy and is shown riding the world government beast, meaning it is in control of it, or at least has great pull. The United States has military bases that cover the globe. Its influence and control is well established. In chapter 17, verse 15, we read, And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. As people from every nation and tongue gathered together in the stands to watch the Olympics, massive blue sheetings, supposedly representing England's maritime culture, were draped over the crowds as the orchestra played Nimrod in accompaniment. There is no question that the London Olympic ceremonies were a celebration of Babylon. Revelation goes on to describe the beast beneath the harlot. And here is a mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. These verses have convinced many to believe that the prostitute is Rome or the Catholic Church. The 7 hills of Rome seem a rather obvious connection. However, if the waters on which she sits are explained by the angel not to be taken literally, that may be more of a reason to believe that the mountains should also not be taken literally. Often when the Bible talks about mountains, it is referring to something or someone powerful. Zechariah chapter 4 verse 7. Who art thou, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain, and he shall bring forth the headstone thereof with shoutings, crying, Grace, grace unto it. And in Jeremiah 51:25, referring to the first destruction of Babylon, Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyeth all the earth, and I will stretch out mine hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, or powers, and in the very next statement we learn that there are 7 kings which go along with them. So the theory that this represents Rome or the Catholic Church, while it does bear similarities, is not very conclusive. Moving on to Revelation 18, we are provided with even more details regarding this prostitute, only now she is referred to as the Great City. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Here again we see that this nation has become a home for every foul spirit. Has become means that it was not always so, alluding to this nation's backslidden state. It has poured out its evil upon the world, and the world has partaken. We also learn here that the merchants of the earth have grown rich by her. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double, according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit as a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, and mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. Babylon accomplished what it set out to do, only it reached the heavens with its sins, and not its mighty tower. This nation is prideful, arrogant, and boastful. Its people think that everything will always go their way. The United States thinks it will always be great. Its people think that they will never know suffering. More and more they celebrate their liberties while taking them for granted. Reading on in verse 11, And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. The United States is by far the largest consumer market in the world, beating out the combined nations of the European Union and almost tripling China. When Mystery Babylon is destroyed, it will cause major economic devastation. Merchants will be left to wonder who will buy their goods. Toward the end of the chapter we read, And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. The great men of the earth will be the merchants or corporations of this nation. Stop carelessly trusting the United States government. Stop believing everything you hear in the media. Take nothing you see at face value. This is the most deceptive time and deceptive institution that's ever existed. It is written, it will deceive the world. What is sorcery and witchcraft? Quite simply, all witchcraft is described in the Bible as manipulation. They have deceived and manipulated all the nations, and now will receive their reward in full. In these next verses, we learn that this nation has blood on its hands. Revelation 17:6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. Are these scriptures speaking of deaths that have already occurred at the hands of the United States? Or is it of a Holocaust yet to come? Will the United States kill all of those opposed to its new order of the ages? Whatever the case, God will hear the cries of these victims, and the United States will meet its end. But how will this end come to pass? When prophesying the destruction of the earlier Babylon, Jeremiah commanded Sariah, And it shall be, when thou hast made an end of reading this book, that thou shalt bind a stone to it, and cast it into the midst of the Euphrates. And thou shalt say, Thus shall Babylon sink, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her. And they shall be weary. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. We see this same act occur once again in reference to Mystery Babylon, Revelation 18:21. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. There are a couple possibilities here. Both of these scriptures could be a symbolic curse, or it is also possible that what was a symbolic act in Jeremiah's time actually becomes a physical reality in the future destruction of Mystery Babylon. Could this be a reference to an asteroid event? We also learn in Revelation 17:16, And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. The 10 kings or leaders of the world government beast will have a hand in the destruction of the harlot. How can it be that the kings of the earth love the whore, committing idolatry with her, while at the same time hating her? The people of the United States have an indomitable spirit. However, this freedom-loving spirit did not stop at civil liberties. As it matured, it eventually cast off the chains of morality, inspiring a pleasure-driven society that has furthered the agenda of the worldwide occult movement. However, this same indomitable spirit makes America a force that is nearly impossible to control. Its people refuse to hand over their personal weapons and personal sovereignties. They refuse to be chipped. They've grown more and more distrustful of government and are one of the loudest voices against it. Will the world powers that be finally come to the conclusion that the United States has served its purpose, that it has outlived its usefulness and now delays the coming world order? Will a cataclysmic event provide an opportunity for the enemies of the United States to make her desolate and naked, stripping her defenses, eat her flesh, dividing up her land and resources, burn her with fire, making war against her? Or will this be a surprise attack without a cataclysmic event, setting nuclear weapons off in major cities, and then standing far off pretending to be in mourning? These are all just possibilities. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Many believe this passage to mean that we should leave this nation figuratively and not literally, that we simply be not partakers of her sins. While it is certainly true that we should not partake in the sins of Babylon, we can't really rule out the necessity of a literal physical departure from it. If this nation will be utterly destroyed, how will a figurative departure save us from its destruction? We must all do what we can. Most are simply unable to physically leave. When things go bad, we must all have a plan. Whether it be finding a place of refuge away from the larger cities in an emergency situation, or putting aside a little food every week as Joseph did upon the interpretation of Pharaoh's prophetic dream. We must be diligent and keep a watchful eye. Prophecies are given for us to prepare. We've been given a precious gift like no other generation that's come before us, to be able to witness some of the most incredible biblical prophecies of all time unfolding right before our very eyes. With these events come an unprecedented opportunity to see that these things are happening, to know that God is real. Accept Jesus into your heart and soul. Be born again in Him. We need not fear 100 Babylons. It is Babylon who should fear. Its end has been written, while our eternity has only just begun.